Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good night, depending on wherever you are. Thanks for joining Cosmos DB Technical Training Series Multi-Right. I'm here joined by Feroz. How are you doing, Feroz? You are muted. Feroz, you are muted.
Hello there. Hey, oh, my bad. Sorry. I'm doing good. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And it's going to be like a hot topic we are joined today to discuss on Azure Cosmos DB with respective to multi-region write that we will be performing. And yes, today it's going to be like a hot topic on trend that we have with a NoSQL show that we'll be joining on today. So here we go. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. You see, with
Can you switch to presentation mode? Sorry, yeah, got it.
yeah. So we are here to speak more into the crosstalk of the multi-region with all like global data center regions that we have with respect to multi-regions, the read and write, speaking about latency and consistency, all those things. So just before getting on to this, I would like to have a quick introduction. I'm here. I go with the name of Feroz. I am Abdul Rasheed Feroz Khan, and I'm the founder and CEO of CodeSizzler, based out of India and Middle East. And I'm recognized as a Microsoft MVP as well on the Azure platform. I've been like 6 years now traveling with the Microsoft MVP program. And yes, there goes many community events that we used to host across with respective to Azure and other like IoT platforms as well. I have my Twitter handle as well, and I would like to do networking. You can keep me buzzed up in case if you have any questions or if you would like to explore more onto the Azure Cosmos DB part. And here they to you on our intro, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Udaiappa Ramachandran. Call me Udai. I'm on Microsoft Azure MVP, Iron Cloud.NET user group, Nashua, New Hampshire. I'm also a speaker. My day job, I work at Akumina as the CTO, CSO. My role includes the technology, security, data privacy, and compliances. I'm very excited to be here today.
All right, and not just us, we do have Chris with us here, who's going to be like the moderator who will be helping us out with your questions, right? You can keep your questions, you can keep it energized, you can make it interactive by keeping your questions to be posted on the live chat that we have. And we have this data platform rockstar, of Microsoft MVP, who is going to help us out on passing the questions and making it much interactive to make it answered. Well, hey Uday, I hope you should have seen this, right? It's like we have Microsoft Learn, where Microsoft has come up with all platforms to make it effective on learning and to get the practices to be done with Sandbox. What's your view on this?
Oh, that's a fantastic topic. I like multi-write. Um,
Yes, absolutely. So it's about like all we build new skills, right? And it's like the topic that we're going to discuss today is going to be on configuring multi-region, right? And this has a touch base with Azure Cosmos DB certification. It's one of the major modules that we have in Azure Cosmos DB certification, where you get Microsoft certified with Azure Cosmos DB with a developer specialty here. And you don't need to worry about like the days are gone where we used to buy like the Microsoft books written by the authors and you need to get prepared for the examination. Yeah, it has made much simple by Microsoft, where you go with Microsoft Learn and you get prepared for the examination. You don't even need to worry about the subscription that you will be looking for. You don't need to give up your credit card or activate your free pass, right? You just can go with the cloud sandbox, which is given by Microsoft. So we encourage you to get certified. Uday, I just want to keep you posted. Like, are you certified on any of the Azure or any Microsoft certifications, and what's your view on it?
Oh, good question. Unfortunately, I'm not certified yet on a Cosmos DB, but I'm pretty 80% of the course material is done. I'm sure I'm going to get one. I think it is very important for me, at least, so the technology to the community group that I'm certified. More than that, I learned a lot more than what I used for the job. So certification is very important.
Absolutely, yes. So it plays a major role, right, in today's current IT industry environment, where I see, right, running a business over multi regions. I see like the clients looking for rock stars to see like they are certified on the respective platform on which they are working for. So this has made much simple again. Like you can scan the QR code, you can get straight right to make sense about the Cosmos DB specialty certifications, and not just this. You have the Learn TV, which has processed like almost like 24 sessions, which speaks about the Azure Cosmos DB platform. And here, the one which you're seeing now is it will be live, and it will be available as a part of recording as well, where you can always come back, you can visit if you have any questions too. And not just that, we would also highly recommend you to go across in case of you're an expert on Azure Cosmos DB, and if you feel like it's an intermediate track that we are discussing on the multi-region, right? Please feel free ahead. Go with the demo, and you can try practicing the demo with the Cloud Sandbox, which has been provided for you. All right. So here is the objective for today. We have a couple of major things that we're going to discuss. And yes, it's going to be on configuring Azure Cosmos DB for multi-region write. We'll be seeing about how we can do the write operations from multi-data center regions, right? And what are the multiple ways that we have as well? Like you can stick to the portal. Do we have any other options, right, Uday?
Absolutely. I think .NET SDK is easiest way you can enable multi-write. Obviously you can do it in a portal.
Oh,
It's
yeah, you being a
yeah.
developer, coming from developer background experience, you stick on towards the SDK environment. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Well, apart from that, we have this there like as I was saying, we have the .NET SDK where we can select a right region for operations. We will be discussing on it, and we do have like you can go with the HTTP endpoints to be called up, or you can stick towards the Azure portal. You have the CLI environment, so any of these things can help you out to configure the multi-region rights with Azure Cosmos DB. And not just that, we would love to hear from you a lot. We would love to make it interactive. So say hi. We have Chris, we have Uday, and I'm going to be a part of this program as well. So let's make it interactive to keep your questions to be posted. And we as SMEs will be live on the chat and we'll be answering your questions as well. And I would love to repeat again, like we have 24 sessions and this one is going to be live. You can also stick to the previous recordings that we have on which we have discussed about Azure Cosmos DB. The Microsoft Learn TV team has processed the videos on the Azure Cosmos DB part with this certification, and you can feel free to get in touch with the same. Well, enough of talking, and let's dive into the topics. Uh, hey, Uday, what do you think about this multi-region right?
I think it's these days, more applications are write intensive. I believe multi-region write is very important for write intensive application. For example, social media. So I think we're going to learn how we can enable these writes across the regions to achieve the high performance, low latency, and the high availability. Is that right?
Ex- yes, yes, you're absolutely right. So here, we are just standing with the same like what Uday was saying. You can take a scenario of it might be like a social platform that we speak about, or the e-commerce industries that we speak about, or the banking industries that we stick on towards. There are like plenty many customers nowadays who have been looking for performing a multi-region right at the same time, right? And we as developers, we even the architects of like finger cross situation to understand how this multi-region right is going to work for us, and at what property or in what parameter we can define it, or how we can keep it modified as well. You see here, it's going to be a quick introduction. The multi-region write is going to be feasible, or it's going to be possible only with a NoSQL store, which is said to be the Azure Cosmos DB. So here with Azure Cosmos DB, you can enable global scale for both read and write throughputs. And the multi-write feature in the Azure Cosmos DB will make it possible for almost like every region to be writable so that you can elastically scale for the heavy workloads that you would be having across the globe. And yes, we here are going to speak about how we can explore the multi-write functionality in the Azure Cosmos DB and how we can use the same on the .NET SDK for the Cosmos DB SQL API. Then, Well, after completing this module, you'll be able to make sense about configuring the Azure Cosmos DB for multi-region write and about SQL API with .NET SDK, which we were saying before. Here is about understanding the multi-region write. So you will see I mean, the further text that we're going to speak about, we will see how we can enable the multi-region writes. And yes, we have the rockstar Uday as well, who is going to help us out on seeing live on from the developer track, right? From a developer track on how this can be enabled. And you just go to the Azure portal, right, to perform this. Just as a simple way, you go to the Azure portal and you navigate to your Azure Cosmos platform. You do have understanding the multi-region, right? We have something as a serverless mode. Uday, just I would like to give some highlight on this. Maybe I can hear some few words from you on the serverless mode.
Just curious to know, is there a serverless mode for the multi-write? If
Yeah.
so, do you be able to explain how can I use it? In the multi-write, I use a serverless mode or throughput mode. If you can give me some insight, that'll be great.
You can always go up with the serverless mode to be enabled. Like you see, you the main objective that we used to consist over here is about the latency that we have, right? You might be having the heavy workloads across the multiple data center region, and you or maybe an architect or you may be a developer. The days have gone where the architects or the administrator is going to sit and just spin up the Cosmos DB platform. Nowadays, even the developers can go ahead. They can use the Cloud Shell environment or they can use the SDKs to spin up the infrastructure that they need, right? Or let's say even the service that they need here. Now, as a developer, you have no idea about what the throughput can be. And then where we go with Microsoft coming into the track saying that you can use the serverless mode. And here in the serverless mode, it's going to be the responsibility of Microsoft Azure, who takes care of the managing the server environment. So it's not that there's no server, there's going to be a backend, the server, which is managed by Microsoft, speaking about the scalability, speaking about the read and write, and to achieve the latency and keep the applications to be up for the customers. So yes, we have serverless mode, and it's going to be like one of I would say a much easier option to work with for we developers there. Well, we do have this with Azure Cosmos DB. I often come across like people saying that do we have a latency or we have no latency when we stick towards Azure Cosmos or any we speak about NoSQL stores in any cloud environment as such. Let's be transparent, right? There's no cloud service provider or any cloud provider who could say that there'll be no latency. There is an expected latency that we have, but it's going to be like a very minimal that we have. Microsoft promises less than 10 ms for less than 6 ms for the read operations and less than 10 ms for global write operations here. So with Azure Cosmos DB, every region supports with both read and writes here, and it enables the ability to write to any region, which is a turnkey operation that does not interrupt the application's availability. So here with the combination of Azure Cosmos DB global geo-replication functionality and the ability to write to any region, the Azure Cosmos DB can be used in the application scenarios with significant write performance and the scalability demands too. And remember, in practice, it's going to be like an account with multi-region write that enables stronger write guarantees than a single region account or a single writable region account for you. With multi-region write enabled, you have like many of the features that are connected with a single region as your Cosmos DB, and it's like you can slide the scale with a well-defined consistency models, or you can even go with the high availability with a financially backed SLA too. Here you see, oh, Uday, I just want to keep it clear. You should have seen, right? We can enable this multi-region right apart from the portal as well. We have multiple ways. Maybe can you share some views on it?
I mean, CLI is so one view. We can use the ARM templates or use the REST API and then write some code to enable that.
Yes, that's right. And we do have like PowerShell, we have code, right? VS Code that we can go up with. I hope you are almost into Visual Studio Code, right? I have seen your video working with Visual Studio Code? And what's going to be the tools you use for it?
Any code. It's a REST endpoint. You can write any code to connect to the REST endpoint, then that enable all the features that we want.
Okay, I would love to see that on your screen. Well, we do have this ARM templates on which we can perform the multi-region write that can be configured. You stick onto it with JSON, or you can go with the Azure Bicep, or we do have like a simple Azure portal on which we can achieve it. And you see here the strong consistency is not supported in multi-region write scenario. So this is like a strong note that we would like to put it on. So in the event of a data center outage, the accounts with multi-write regions will continue to be available for read and write operations, as the SDK will automatically attempt the request at any other part of the region from the preferred region list. So the multi-region write can be configured just by using the Azure CLI, or you go with the PowerShell code, or I said no, the ARM templates, or you go with the Azure portal. And once the multiple write region functionality is enabled, all replica regions are connected with the account will automatically become the writable regions then. So I repeat, the strong consistency is set to be a part which is not set to be supported for multi-region write scenario. That's enough, and I would love to show you the properties that we'll be using on to configure this multi-region support in the SDK. So in the .NET SDK for the Azure Cosmos DB SQL API, we are going to configure the preferred region on which we can write to the matter of selecting between the different properties that we have. So you see, like we can go with the Cosmos Client Options object here. So I have a quick note, like if you do not specify a preferred region, the SDK is going to automatically default to the primary region for your account. So let's say you can put up a list saying that the default regions can be like East US, West US, or Southeast Asia, something like that. And in case if you're not going to mention that, then there'll be like a preferred regions, which is going to be picked by Microsoft by default there. We can also select a single write region here. And for that, we will be using the application region property. And here now it's going to be like we specify which region you want the SDK to use for its operations. And effectively, that's set to be the writable region you will be using there. So here, maybe in the further decks, I can show you. See here, you see like it's going to be West US that we use, the regions that we have listed up. So you see the Cosmos client options here with the application region listing up West US. And we can also go with using the Cosmos client builder to configure the preferred region as well. So here, once the client connects to Azure Cosmos DB, the client will pull a list of regions and prioritize them based on the proximity from the region that they're going to choose. So if the region you selected is not set to be available, the client will try the alternative regions in the established order that we have. And you see, we also have like a preferred write region list. So this is like if you want to create your own prioritized list of regions as per your customer needs for read and write operations, then we go with the property of application preferred regions to become that. So here in the first example that I'm going to speak about, you will see the property is set to the list of 3 regions in a customized prioritization that we have. We say Cosmos client options that sticks towards West US, Southeast Asia, Southeast Australia here, and we do have like North Europe that has been added up. And again, this same example could be implemented for the Cosmos client builder options as well. They're just same like what we have been speaking before. You see here, we are using the Cosmos client, right? And we give up the builder, we pick up the data center preferred regions as well to be listed at that. Well, so that's enough to see about, and you'll see like we do have like some conflict when we try to write from multiple regions. Now we get resulted with the conflict issues that we came across, and I would love to invite Uday to speak more about it. Hey, Uday.
Hey, let me ask you a question. What is the big problem if we have a multi-write?
I see like when we have multi-write from different data center regions, what in case if someone tries to write it from East US at the same timestamp, if you have someone from the other part of a region as well, right? I'm just like confused on how it gets written towards a global data that we have there.
Okay, the conflict will happen. So what is conflict means? When we're trying to write the same data concurrently, if the data is not propagated to other regions, that's called a conflict. That's what we're going to talk about now. There are three types of conflict that can happen. One is the insert, update or replace. The last one is the delete. For Microsoft, the way it handling the conflict is inbuilt. You don't need to do anything at all. They will resolve the conflict by using the parameter called last try to wins, which they will solve it, which uses the field internally underscore timestamp. So you have a record with the ID, say X. You have, you trying to update one region. If it's propagates, that ID gets into another region, no problem at all. If you're trying to add the same record with the ID X, then it's going to fail because the record is already propagated. Now take a scenario two. You have a record ID X, or maybe Y in this case, and you trying to insert those record into two regions concurrently or simultaneously. If the record is not propagated, even with the milliseconds latencies, then the conflict will happen. In this case, we call it as an insert conflict because the more than one region trying to insert the record that contains the ID Y. That's called insert conflict. Now, what is a replace conflict? Replace conflict or update conflict happens when you're trying to update the record. Let me give you a nice example. You have a social media feeds. You want the user to be, like or follow, whatever it is you call it as. So now you're trying to update that record on both sides. Now the update conflict can happen, or even an employee detail. So you have employee details. You're trying to update one side as a one data, other side as other data. Now the conflict can happen if the data is not committed already. So that's the case, you can resolve the conflict. Microsoft internally, it uses the parameter called last try to wins, which again depends on the timestamp, which is predefined field underscore TS. So the higher the value is the winner, right? The last conflict, we call it as the delete. The delete conflict can happen if one region trying to update with the deleted rows. So here is a little thing you need to understand. When this conflict happens, the delete wins. There is nothing to do with who is the last winner or not, because the row is already deleted. So delete is obviously going to win again. Again, to do all these things, you don't have to do anything at all. It is inbuilt into it by using the last try to wins, which rely on the field underscore TS.
Interesting. But then I have a question like you're speaking about the delete and all these things. So you can only set a conflict resolution policy on a newly created containers, right?
That is correct. So let me speak a little bit more over here. So as I said last try to wins, but that uses the field called underscore DS, right? It's a time-based resolution. But Microsoft also let you use your own field, but the only requirement is that field has to be a numerical. Okay, so you can take, for example, year field, or you can come up with another timestamp field that uses the long numeric field on it, right? So you can bring any numeric field to resolve this conflict by configuring the field name. So by default, it is the underscore TS, the last try wins. But if you want to use your own field, you can say that custom whatever the field that you want to see it. That's how you override it. But this functionality is available all APIs, meaning that not only the SQL API, you can use any other APIs or any SDK platform you can use to solve this. So now, as Feroz asked the question, so how can I do this? You only have to do this when you create the containers. Once the container created, it's done. You cannot do it. But if you want to enable this functionality to the existing container, you need to drop or back up somehow, and then you create a new container. That container property, unfortunately, you can set on the portal, but you will have to use some programmatic mode. Maybe use the CLIs or use a code. Here is a snippet that explains to you how you can set those properties by using at the time of container creation. So if you look at it, you still use the mode last try to wins, but instead of default path, now you see the resolution path is going to be metadata / shortable timestamp. That's again is an example. You can, for example, if you want to use year as a resolution path, you just going to say resolution path is going to be /year. If the year property is available as a JSON property, as a root property. If year is available, for example, join date and then the property year, then you're technically going to say /join date /year, right? So that's just your JSON path.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, you have a question?
No, I'm pretty much good. Thank you very much.
All right. So the next thing what we talk about is that the only way we can solve the conflict, right? So we, what in an often scenario, we will have to bring our own logic to solve this problem. That's more important, right? So we need to bring our own logic instead of relying on the last right wins, or instead of relying on another numeric field, which Cosmos DB will take care of it internally. But often scenario, we want to resolve our own logic. For example, I was saying before, in a social media feed, you want to, people like it, people follow it, all those things happening in all the regions, because social media is a pretty big application. You have to be a low latency in a high throughput mode. Otherwise, people is not going to like that. In that case, the likes can happen every single regions. But that's also is going to come up with the problem of it's, increasing that conflict, right? But what will happen if you rely on the field of year in this example, or some other default field underscore TS, you're going to lose that, that counts and all those things, right? So you're going to lose the real value of the data is being updated. That's a perfect scenario. You can use the, your own custom logic to solve that scenario. So in this case, one way to solve that is to use the stored proc, right? So how to use a stored proc? You first write a stored proc. It can support any CRUD operation on a partition key, but it also brings the exactly once guarantee. What does that mean? If there is a insert conflict and you're trying to resolve the conflict in your logic, but in the logic, you're trying to insert it again, it's not going to succeed. So that's called exactly once guarantee. The operation is once indicated, but that operation is, that's it. It's atomic. It's going to be there, but you are not going to reinsert it or something like that. At this point in time, this functionality is available for SQL API. So if you write a stored proc, it is available for the SQL API. Maybe down the road it will be available for the other APIs. Here's a little syntax how you can write the stored proc. It uses the predefined syntax function, which is a JavaScript language, function name, incoming items, existing items is tombstone, and then the conflict items. Let's talk about what those syntaxes look like. The existing items is going to bring you the items that are already committed, right? So that's the container committed value. The incoming items is going to generate the conflict as it's inserted or updated. The tombstone tells you if the incoming item is previously deleted or not, right? So that's all you need. Now you know the conflicting item, you know what made the conflict insert or update. We also have the is that deleted on the committed container, right? And then the conflict item is all the items that conflict incoming items. So with these parameters, you write some logic. We will see it in a demo. You write some logic of what you want to achieve out of this, right? So that easy to enable the custom logic through stored proc. How to enable that stored proc? It is pretty simple. Again, it has to be done part of the container creations. Once the container is created, you can do anything. And again, as I said before, it's not like you can do anything. You have to pack up the data, and then you recreate the container, and then import it back with all these cool features. So if you look at it, it uses the same exact syntax. If you look at the mode, conflict resolution mode, instead of last write, now we say that custom. That indicates that, okay, we are not going to use the last write wins. We are not going to look for the numeric field. Instead, we're going to look for a resolution procedure, which is going to be a DBs, which is a list of DBs, and then we say the database name, and then the collections, and then we say the container name, which is the collection, and then we see the stored procs. Your Cosmos DB can contain multiple stored procs, but you will have to say which stored proc you want to invoke if such a conflict happens. So you say the stored proc, and then the proc names, right? So that's the one. Then you say container not create, and then we have the code in this demo. We have all the code in a code.js, which makes sense because it's a JavaScript file. Then we're going to say container dot create stored proc. That stored proc is created. At that point, Cosmos DB is not going to look for last write wins. It is going to pipe all the conflict data over to this stored proc scenario.
Uday, I just have a quick question here. Like, do we have the stored proc as the only way, or can we even fix to like any of our own logics here?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. Stored proc is a way to do it, but we have a multiple way to solve the problem. So the other way that you solve this problem is called conflict feed. So what is conflict feed? When the conflict happens, if you configure to use a custom mode and you are not providing the resolution path, you only provide the resolution path for the stored proc where it runs your logic. If you're not providing it, then it will move all the rows to the feed. There is a table called field collection, conflict collection. It will move all the rows to a conflict feed. It is very useful if you want some expertise to review the data, or you have some external application that you want to process the data afterwards. It's mainly as a review, or processing the data afterwards is very useful. But again, as you look at the syntax, like before, there is not a lot of difference, right? Instead of setting the resolution path, we just simply say mode is equal to custom path. We are not setting the other properties, and then we create the container. But again, to note down over here, it has to be, everything has to be set part of the container creation, not after that.
Understood.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other question?
I'm pretty much.
For
I would
right.
love to see on the real time with the exercise.
Yeah. Enough of talking, I guess. And I think now I can dive into and show you demos, how we can use all these cool features that we talked so far. If you look at my screen here, it is very important for you to note that this is where you begin this training series, right? Multi-write. If you already started, you don't need to follow through, but I'm sure you already began this page from here on. So you follow it. As you go through, you will get into a page, unit 6, where you can launch the lab. Once you click on the launch lab, it will, again, it's a sandbox environment. You don't need a credit card or anything, as Feroz said. It has the documentation, self walkthrough. You just to follow it and then create it. It has 2 sections in the same exercise. One is going to be how you can create a Cosmos DB multi-write. The other is going to be how you can use the .NET SDK. There may be a time when you click on the Create Cosmos DB, it may take us some time. Sometimes when you enable multi-write, it will take up to 5 minutes. So again, you don't know. That's why I'm saying you don't need to follow through. You can do it your own phases. But the important thing here, you complete the lab. That's most important. In the lab, it will use the source code from here. You are going to look at the number 22 SDK multi-regions. And then it's a very simple script. Again, there is instruction once you launch the lab. This is how you're going to begin, right? A simple script, you put the keys and so on. In my demo, I have a fully working demo, and you can find the completed code over here in case if you want afterwards. Okay. So let me go and walk through what is in the launch lab, right? So the first thing what we're going to do, we're going to create a Cosmos DB. So for that, you go to your portal, if you have one, or you can even use a sandbox, wherever you are. If you don't want to follow the sandbox, you can use your own. Just create it. Then you select the SQL API, right? So that's the one we're going to select it. Once you select the SQL API, pick up the subscriptions that you want to, and then pick up the resource group. I'm not going to complete this section entirely, but I'll walk you through the steps. As I said before, completing the entire section, we need to wait for a long time. So I already pre-configured everything, but I'll walk you through the steps and cancel it. You enter the name, live learn 2022-06080A. That's going to be my Cosmos DB. And then I pick up the region, it doesn't matter. So here is the mode. To configure multi-write, you will have to use the provisioned throughput mode. You cannot use serverless mode because serverless mode cannot run more than one regions. But for that reason, and not supported, you have to use the provisioned throughput mode, right? And then uncheck this apply free tiers, just to keep it to not apply. And then this is up to you. Limit the total amount of throughput, or provision throughput. Again, you can change anytime you want. This just gives you a higher throughput. You can auto scale it, or you just keep it fixed throughput. If you are doing some demo, a lot of insert, you can keep it fixed throughput to reduce the cost, right? So for this demo, it doesn't matter what you select. As I said before, you can modify that value now or anytime later. We are not going to talk about the other properties over here that beyond scope of this lab. So we're going to click and review, right? So this is going to come back, validate, and tells you, okay, my validation is success. So now you're going to click on the create, right? As you click create, it's going to create the database called, what is the name we said? Basic, right? Database called name. This one, live learn 2022-06080. But I'm not going to click create. I have an empty database. I'm going to use that one. So here I created an empty database. That's how you create the database, right? So here is my empty database. I'm going to walk you through two key properties that enables the multi-write. If you look at this, once after you create the database, you go back to the replicate data globally. Once you are in there, you have an option called configure regions, multi-region writes. By default, it's disabled. So once after creating the database, you have to come back and enable it. But here, this region is not there. When you create the first time, it's going to tell you will have the one region, the default region, or the primary region you call it as. It will be there as a write region, right? So you need to have at least one write region. So the default region will be a write region. And I added for this demo here. And now once you enable, and you can enable it, or I can add more regions if I want to, right? So it's all read enabled, but I can add another region, say Northeast or East Europe, and then I say that. So I can, but once I enable write, it's going to put everything in a write. Okay, once I disable it, now I have an option. Everything else is a read mode. That is the primary region is the write mode. So you have to choose. If your application is write intensive, then you're going to select a write, enable multi-write. Your application is read intensive, you're going to select primary regions and then do everything else. But in this case, just enable it, add more regions. By clicking save, it's going to deploy the right region for all three regions that we selected. In your exercise, you can pick whatever region you are, it is going to deploy that. Or you can take as many regions as you want, or you can bring it afterwards as many regions as you want. There is two important things that I also wanted to show you. This manual failover and service, which is out of the scope, still it will work if you have the read regions. For the write regions, it will disable those functionalities because the write regions inbuilt auto failover. Even the one region disaster happens, it will automatically use the other regions. Even in your connection string, you see a region called, maybe I'm picking it here, Australia East, but you are not having the Australia East, it still knows it needs to connect to one of the qualified available regions. Okay, that credit is. The third part that we're going to look at it over here, it's called assuming that I already deployed the multi-region. So I'm going to show you over here. So in my database over here, I already enabled multi-regions. So if we go back to the replicate, I enabled it, when it loads. I have the East Asia and the East US. I purposefully picked East Asia as my primary region so I can show you some latencies and how cool this functionality or the feature is. Okay, but now if you want to create a new container, and I'm going to go empty one and then show you how you can create a new container, right? So you go back over here, Data Explorer, and then you can say, if you want to create a new database, you say new database, then create it, or you can create a new container directly over there. But in order to create a database, you have to have a container. In order to create a container, you have to have a database. Either the database can be new. It says new because I don't have any database already exist. If I have exist, automatic maybe use existing, but that doesn't matter. But you can create over here, right? So I'm going to say Cosmic database. Shared throughput across the container means, again, it's beyond the scope of this talk. There is other talks that you can refer to it. You want to share the throughput. All the other containers are only to this container. So you technically going to check on it, and then you give the container name. I'm going to say product. Again, in your walkthrough, then the partition key. category ID. It is important to select what will be your partition key. Again, that's not scope of this talk. There is another talk how to select a partition key. I would strongly encourage go and look at it. This case, we're going to pick a manual because we want to keep it for the demo. We don't want to accidentally increase the cost. So we select the manual and then good. That's very simple. Create a new database, containers, give the partition key, and good to go. Okay. And we are not going to create it again. It will take some time. So now I'm going to use those two databases. Is there any question for? Okay, I have two databases over here. Learn Live, Multi-Master. Multi-Write is also called Multi-Master, and then the Learn Live. Okay, so now let's dive into some of the code over here. So if you look at the code over here, but before we look at the code, let's look at it, the Learn Live. Learn Live, as I said before, it has the read-only region. I'm having it purposefully. East Asia is a primary and East US is the secondary, are the read-only regions. And I'm located in a Boston area, so I'm most likely to hit the East US for read. Not most likely. I will hit to East US for read unless I force my preferred regions. And for all the write, I'm going to go to East Asia. If you look at the Learn Live Multi-Master, I look at the replication data globally, and again, I enabled it. And I have enabled write on East Asia. I also enabled write on East US. Since I'm coming from Boston area, East US is the closest to proximity that I can get access to it. Cosmos DB knows, okay, that's my write region. It will connect all the writes to East US. For example, you coming from the central US, what will happen now? It will still connect to the East US. It knows the latencies, right? It measures the latency periodically, and it knows if you're coming from the central US, now I'm going to put you to the right on the East US. It's definitely not going to put you on the East Asia because it's a faraway region. There's going to be a lot more latency, right? So it knows. If you come from West US, yeah, maybe East Asia or East US based on how the traffic look like. Okay, but you got the concept. Even if you don't say it, or you come from a different regions, your application come from a different region, the takeaway is the Cosmos DB knows what is the closest to proximity region that it can get to a high throughput. Okay, that's the takeaway over here. All right. Now, in this case, I have a container. I simply hand created this container. As we did before, there's not a lot of options how we can set the conflict resolution and all those things. But I hand created it to populate some sample data. Right? Any questions? All right. Let's get back to the code here. So if you look at this code, you're going to run. If you're going to run over here, this is a lab demo. You go back to it and then create the container and then run it. That's all you're going to do in the lab. Now I have some more things how to measure the read, which I have, and as I said before, I have it over there, and then read measure, and then I'm going to do a write measure. Okay. Then I have a sample code how you can set the custom conflict resolution. Again, that will create the container and then do all those things, and then how to set the stored prod. And then the set the conflict resolution using the feed, how you can do that. And then the generate conflict, right? So all those demos over here. But let's run this one. So I'm going to do that. .NET run. It's going to compile it. .NET run. It's a builder. Give it a second. So now the build is succeeded. So we're going to do a .NET run. Okay, so it's asking me. So press enter to any key to run the lab content, which you see it as you can see it over here. It's pretty simple. Use a Cosmos client builder, and then you pass in the regions, and then we simply insert some item called a product. It's going to create the item. So I'm going to enter it. And even if I pass in the wrong region over here, it knows which region, just a valid region it will connect it. Okay. And the second demo that I'm going to run is the single write, right? So if you look at the code over here, we go back to a read and write. We pass the single write multi-read database, which is in it, and then we see the value how throughputs, like latencies, how it takes. If you look at it over here, if you can see it over here, it takes like a 240 milliseconds, right? 247, 40. So every insert, we sampling for 10 data. So you have, you see some throughputs over here. But for the read, I know it goes often a little bit higher because it's from my machine. Some network, whatever the reason, it's take a little bit higher, but you can come to a conclusion which the read is much slow, much faster. That's because reading from the east, but it's writing all the way to the East Asia. Okay, but in my next demo, what are you going to do? We're running the multi-write. So in this case, if you look at it over here, the write is much faster, right? And the read is remains same as it used to be before because we're writing to a east region. So that's the next demo. If you look at the next demo, how we can set a custom conflict resolution path, it's going to run it, right? So if I look at it over here, this code over here, get custom resolution path. We set the partition key, and then we set the path, whatever the path we want to call it as. So we pass the path called /year, and then it's going to create it. Unfortunately, you can see it on the portal, but you got the concept. That's how the instead of using the _ds, now we're forcing to use the JS. If your document contains /year, then it will take that and resolve it. And then the next demo, how we can set the stored proc. Stored proc. So, if you look at it over here, there is a code stored proc over here, and it takes all 4 parameters we discussed. It takes that, and then it go back to the code line. I just to quickly highlight that. If I look at it, it takes, it tells you what's the stored proc name. That name should match on the stored proc, and then you set the field as you explained, and then you create it. And again, which we can see it in the portal. So if you go back to live module, and then you refresh it over here, we had only one container products. Now you look at the third container that we created, and then it shows at stored proc, right? And then if you look at the one key difference between a multi-write and a single write, you will have the table called conflicts. That's where everything's going to write. If you look at this single write, you will not see that feed called conflicts. The last demo here, so I'm going to hit enter here. That's the feed, and then the generate conflict feed. It's high. I tried to generate the conflict feed. It's much faster. It's not generating me the conflict feed, but you got the concept. So if you look at it on over here, so how do you set the conflict feed? We set it once if the conflict happens, it'll write back to if I reload this one over here, it'll write back to conflicts over here, right? So in the conflict. The last demo we already completed is the generate conflict. You just have a same item and you're trying to iterate in if I do it in a loop, it may work. So you either use a parallel action or use a task action, to perform the same action. If you run it in a loop, you may get into a conflict. But if it is fast enough, you may not get it. But again, it has to be a concurrent. That's all I have for demo. Any question?
That's interesting, Uday. I have few knowledge check questions to be shared, right? Let's make it interactive. And we had a few questions from the learners as well. So if you could see my screen, right, let's go on. We will test the knowledge over the chat where they can keep it interactive. They can put the answers, right? And I have like a couple of questions to go ahead as well. So you see here, we have a question like, let's say that you're going to create an application that will be deployed to various regions across the globe. Okay, so it's going to be like you're going to back up with a globally distributed Azure Cosmos DB account. Where you'll be having the multi-region right to be enabled. And here is you're going to know, like for each application region, you'd like to use the .NET, like how you have been showing And we will select a specific region on which the read and write operations can be performed. So here, the SDK is determined with the fallback regions based on the proximity of the selections. And the question here is that which method property of the Cosmos client builder should we choose to get this task to be completed? We have three options here, and maybe we can give some time. The learners can follow up at the URL which has been given. You can vote at eka.ms/polls, and we will see we will discuss on what's going to be the right solution, or we will still see what's going to be the right takeaway that you have received as such. Okay, I'm there on the comments now.
Uh, if you ask me, I was thinking the consistency. That again, consistency level out, rolled out here because we're talking about the regions, not the consistency. Again, then that A is eliminated, and then there is two options left here. Then I was reading the question. It says for each application region, the fallback, I was about to select the preferred regions for the fallback. Then I read the statement, application regions, right? So we want every app to select their own regions for read and write, and then fallback it. So I lean towards the C based on what we learned today.
Yes, yes, exactly. But I see like a few of them have voted for B. It's gonna be C. The reason is that just same like what the elimination was speaking by the pointers of Uday. You see here, we will stick on towards the application region method, which is said to be like we select a single region and then we let the SDK to build the failback region list for the same. So it's
Yeah,
going to be
okay.
the will be C. Yeah.
That's
Well,
great.
go ahead. Go ahead with it. Yeah.
No, I see feedback from audience. They all saying C, which is great. So
Yeah. Well, and it's going to be the next question here, where a quick another last question to do a knowledge check. So consider like we have a large data solution running on the Cosmos DB account with multi-region write to be enabled. And the team is looking to write an application on which we can read the conflicts from the conflict feed, and then we can resolve them using the manual code as well. So in that scenario, what could be the resource that we can stick on to create for this? You have three options again, like you can go with a last write action. Oh, this is something that again we have been speaking about, right? Like,
yeah. I think we'll give a few seconds for audience to read through the questions, and then I can take my choice. And I may be wrong, but I will take my choice.
oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, let me take my choice, and I am already excited to see what audience is saying. But let's do a little elimination rule here. The question is here: your team would like to write an application to read conflict from the conflict feed and to resolve them using a manual code. All right, so manual code that eliminates A because that's not going to be any manual code. It's an inbuilt Cosmos DB logic, which is the last rate wins is eliminated. So A is not an answer. Then I think logic, I was thinking to see both the custom config policy and the stored proc because we saw it, right? In the demo, we can solve custom logic through the stored proc. And then I read back the question, it says just a feed. And then it says a manual code, right? So all they need is the feed and then the manual code. So I would lean towards the B, custom conflict resolution policy, so that the conflict released to the feed, and then my application can process the code. What do you think?
That's absolutely right with respect to the conflict feeds that we have. And I see like most of the learners have stick down towards the B as well. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's great to know. Yeah.
Well, sounds good then. So with that, we shall go with a quick summary for the show. We have been discussing about configuring the multi-region write with Azure Cosmos DB. We have been seeing on how to use the .NET SDK as well. to stick on with the right vision for the operations. You can learn more. You could see like we have the learn live sessions that are more available. As I said before, we have like 24 sessions, and this is going to be like a live session which you have been interacting. You could also find the recording of the same that would be available on the Microsoft Learn, right, with the Learn Live TV. And you can keep this QR code to be scanned, or you can have a bookmark of the link which has been put on the wall. You also need to go ahead, you see, we have the Learn questions that are available as well. Maybe I would encourage you if they can hop in to speak about Learn and few more highlights to be given on the Azure Cosmos part.
Yeah, I think based on this meeting today, I'm super excited. I'm excited. I'm been using the Cosmos DB multi-write. One of the application that we built here is a social feed. We call it as the micro moments feeds, right? That's very useful for multi-write. We have, I mean, again, the multi-write comes when you need the write intensive application. Social is the one great example, but it's not just stick to a social. You can also use the IoT based applications. You can also base the retail applications, right? So you take any retail, they can use the multi-write. Our gaming applications. That's more important, right? So gaming applications, they all need the low latency and then high throughput. They're very important. So use the gaming applications. Those are the some use cases that you can play with it today. But again, you get all those things just a few clicks. You only have to resolve when you need to resolve the custom logic. Otherwise, just a few clicks, you get this cool, awesome feature running over there. So it's all cool features not coming for free, but you have to plan for it. It's very important that you pay attention to the cost when you play with it, right? So you how you set the throughput, because the multi-write is only available for throughput mode. You have to select the right throughput. So you select the throughput of 20,000 RUs per second, but you're trying to make a write for 40,000 RUs per second. Now you have a problem. So you need to plan. So your planning is, significantly important. But again, that's where the auto scale come into a picture. When you enable auto scale with the multi-write, your application now scale from the minimum, right? So, so 10% is the minimum, or 20% is the minimum. For 4,000, yeah, 10% is the minimum. Say, for example, you do a 20,000 RUs per second, you're going to pay for 2,000 RUs no matter what, use it or lose it. But again, remaining 80,000 RUs can be auto scale. That's very important to understand how you want to plan for throughputs. But in my application that we built over here, we have a throughput of 100,000. So that means that we're getting a high throughputs. That throughput includes read and write. But in the demo, I think I'm still sharing my screen. If you look at my screen over here, you see pay attention to the RUs, right? It was a simple read, but it's taking a 12.57 RUs, right? It is taking a 12.57 RUs. Why? It's because it's writing to a multi-regions. If you have more regions, your RU is going to be significantly high. You need to plan for it. So look at here, when we write the data into a single region, single write, and then the read, you did not pay any penalty for any RUs for the read. It was remaining one when I was writing in a single region database or multi-write database. My read RU, which is request units per seconds, is remain same, one here or here. Because I'm reading it, my closest proximity Cosmos DB, right? In this case, I was hitting the East US. Even if I was hitting the East Asia or Australia, then I'm still going to pay for one RU. But for write, that's not the case. I'm making a very simple insert that contains the three field. I made a RU when it is a single write, 6.29 RUs. But when I make a two regions, now that's doubled. 12.57 RUs. What will happen if you make a three regions? Again, it's going to be tripled, and four. You just multiply, right? 1 plus number of regions minus 1. So if you have 10 regions, 1 plus 10 minus 1, or in other words, 10 regions. So you have to plan for the cost as well as the RU. The RU is going to be detected from your provisioned throughput. If you provisioned for 20,000 throughputs, these all come to a picture. But at the time there is a significant amount of reads, they may have a problem slightly, right? So they make it a 429, right? 429 error is a kind of, it's overread. You may get into a lot of 429 errors, and you should have an application that handles all those things. So multi-write is an amazing feature to build a high scalable, low latency, high throughput application. But you should consider all these things. Again, it's you just get in over there, create it, play with it, and build your application and enjoy it. I'm enjoying it for last 1 year. It is amazing. Multi-write is the most favorite of my feature.
Absolutely, yes, Uday. And it was more into like a wow factor, when I was like initially listening to the Azure Cosmos DB that I used to work about. Like it offers 99.99% security for availability, throughput, low latency, and it helps us in the consistency that we have been speaking across as well. It gives us with a relaxed consistency across all the accounts with multiple users that we have. That's said to be like something which is really great. And not just that, I would also ask our learners to go with this Learn TV to see more. Like you can watch the videos, you can find the practice sandbox environments that are available. So it's not that you need to again go with a Azure subscription to be activated or anything. You can feel free to stick on towards the Microsoft Learn, and we have like a plenty many videos that speaks about the certification track on the Azure Cosmos. And not just that, I would also say we have the other tracks. So you don't miss with all the series of the 24 sessions that we have, the episodes that we have. And probably you can join us again at the June 15 at the Pacific timing between 12 to 1:30 on customizing and index policy with SQL API again on the Azure Cosmos. So you take a note of this URL, or you can even go ahead by scanning the QR code to get registered for the same thing. Once
I
again,
see a word question from the feed. Again, that question I believe you answer. What will happen in my application uses the region that is, disaster, or in my code has the wrong regions where my application is only provisioned to a different region? And the answer is Cosmos DB will resolve that when you are in a multi-write. It will automatically connect it to, closest to proximity other regions. So don't worry about it. Just Cosmos DB will resolve it.
right. Well, so this is something which we would like to insist again, and you can go with the global certification to be achieved, which has been made much easier nowadays. But you don't need an instructor or you don't need a tutor. We have Microsoft coming up with this Learn TV sessions, and we have the Cloud Sandbox environment, which is already available. To get certified with this Azure Cosmos DB developer specialty, and you can follow either me or you could see the Twitter handle which has been shared by us both for myself and Uday as well. And we do have Chris over here. So you can feel free to reach us to help you out in case if you have any challenges or questions to get certified, not just on Azure Cosmos DB, but anything on Azure. We would love to extend our wings to help you on all ways that we can. So once again, thank you very much and happy learning to all of you. It was a pleasure joining hands with Uday and the complete Microsoft team to do a quick knowledge sharing as well. Thank you.